Hello, my name is Jill Murray, and I would like to talk to you about a book that I read called Reading and Writing in Science. Tools to Develop Disciplinary Literacy. Can you see it? There we go. This book is by Maria Grant, Douglas Fisher, and Diane Lapp. This relatively short book, at only 160 pages, is packed with powerful information that will help any science teacher. The book is designed to address lessons and standards for grades 6 through 12. The basic theme of the book is taking the next generation science standards and the Common Core standards for English language arts, and together emphasizing for science educators the skills and knowledge that students need in order to be scientifically literate citizens who are able to make reasonable decisions about the world in which we live. So how do they approach that in writing this book? In the first few pages, the book begins by addressing how science education compares internationally and offers graphs and cites evidence for outcomes of standardized testing. It's emphasized that by taking a look at this testing, we can then reflect on how to better improve science education, since we're not achieving standards to be prime contributors in the science community at large. This book begins with information about how we are to teach students to think like scientists. How can we help students stretch and grow when it comes to acquiring science literacy? Science literacy is not only for the nerd image of a scientist, someone wearing a lab coat and carrying a clipboard, but it's for everyday people who care about their neighborhoods, water and air quality, land and trees, animals, and even human beings. Our role as science educators is to develop these types of science literate students who can communicate with others through everyday conversations, as well as building the skills to be able to read challenging scientific text and write well-planned informational pieces that can contribute to the science community. In the book, there are 5 chapters. The first chapter, which I already spoke about, contains mostly background information. The second chapter focuses on the next generation science standards and the ELA Common Core, and how there are cross-cutting ideas to incorporate both standards into the science classroom. The other 3 chapters are where I learned the most applicable information that will help me in designing lessons in my own classroom. They were reading like a scientist, writing like a scientist, and assessing student learning in science. Through these chapters, I was able to glean some really good strategies on helping students to better comprehend and pick apart the most complex texts that often go into written pieces in science. One of the main takeaways from this chapter for me was how important it is when students read to learn, that they should then communicate that information by either speaking about it to someone else or by summarizing it and writing it out. It is one of the best ways to check for understanding that a student has actually learned the concepts that they have read. One of the strategies that I plan on implementing into my lessons from the chapter on reading like a scientist is the idea of request or reciprocal teaching. In these 2 strategies, students are either in pairs or groups of 4. Each student has a role and an identified purpose for reading the material, so that once they're finished reading individually, they will then work together to learn the material in a more in-depth fashion by utilizing their roles. In request, the students are paired, and one is the questioner, the other is the respondent. After reading, the questioner thinks of 2 or 3 questions to ask their partner. They then ask the questions and checks to make sure that the responder answers those questions correctly. Meanwhile, the responder reads the same text and tries to figure out or consider 2 or 3 questions that they may be asked by the questioner. They don't want to be caught not knowing the information, so they're going to read it a little bit more in depth. In reciprocal teaching, there are 4 roles that the students are responsible for. One person is to predict what the reading is about. One person is to clarify ideas within the reading. One person is to question what happens in the reading, and the last person will then summarize the material. These roles help facilitate the discourse that should be taking place before, during, and after reading is completed. In the chapter on writing like a scientist, I learned the importance of scaffolding writing in the science classroom. I also learned that it's essential for students to learn to write by journaling or with quick writes. Those things should not always be graded so that students can practice putting down their ideas, scientific vocabulary, and communicating their written thoughts without any fear of judgment. I also found great value on providing students with sentence frames. I always find that writing that first sentence on a piece of paper or a blank screen to be one of the most challenging parts of writing. By using sentence frames, you can direct a student to write about a specific topic or specific information and hope that they will continue with focused material on that topic. In the final chapter on assessing student learning in science, there is special importance that has been given to Bloom's taxonomy and Lauren Anderson's revision of Bloom's taxonomy by using verbs instead of nouns to assess student learning. In addition, they include the depth of knowledge chart to help facilitate the levels of assessments that can be used. And in this chapter, while they don't offer too many variations on assessments, they stress the significance of formative assessment to guide, plan, and adjust your instruction in the classroom. They do encourage science teachers to divide assessments into oral language, written language, and content knowledge to continue to develop science literate students who can converse, write, and think about the world around them. I learned a lot from this book, and I highly recommend it to anyone teaching science in either middle school or high school. Thank you.